Today we'll be looking at a video by user PsychonautWispy titled My Problem with Secular Humanism. And already I'm happy to tackle a video on my specific secular philosophy, rather than some theists trying to pretend like atheism means anything beyond an absence of theistic belief. So let's check it out.
What is up, my fellow psychonauts, and welcome back. For today's video, I'm going to be talking about my philosophical problem with secular humanism and how it relates to faith and religion. I got an idea for this video when I was having a conversation with a transgender atheist today at a fair that was near me. I talked to them for about an hour, and it just sparked some creative thought in me and gave me a few more reasons why I believe in the things that I do.
Well, this is a coincidence. This topic was sparked by a trans atheist, and here I am, a completely different trans atheist responding to your video. Anyway, just to get something off my chest, I noticed that you have some respiratory difficulties that come and go throughout the video. As one YouTuber to another, don't let that hold you down. I've had something similar which is linked to my mental health, and it seems to really piss off some people, but honestly, fuck them. If you have troubles presenting and yet you choose to do so anyway to partake in discourse, good on you, and I have nothing but support for you in that regard.
Now, the best way to understand secular humanism is to read the definition of it. Now, secular humanism is described as a non-religious worldview rooted in science, philosophical naturalism, and humanist ethics. So it does not depend on supernaturalism, which is what Christianity would be defined as. Instead of relying on faith, doctrine, or mysticism, secular humanists use reason, compassion, and human experience to find solutions to human problems. Secular humanists promote values including integrity, benevolence, fairness, and responsibility, and believe that with good reason, goodwill, and the free exchange of ideas, we can build a better world for ourselves and future generations.
Just to add some rigidity to what was stated there, as it's somewhat vague, I've come up with 3 fundamental beliefs that I hold to as a humanist. Note that these are only my personal 3 and other humanists may differ. Fundamental number 1. All human life has inherent value. Fundamental 2. Science is the best method for investigating and understanding the universe we live in. Fundamental 3. Comprehensive education is the emancipator of all of humanity. Again, these are just my 3 core beliefs, but I thought it might add something to the discussion.
Now, I don't have a problem with their fundamental viewpoints. I don't have a problem with the idea that we should spread compassion, enjoy, and be accepting of others, but I have a problem with philosophically where they are coming from, because this group of people that I was talking with said that God was basically irrelevant, that religion and faith were not reasonable because they could not be proven. There is no evidence to suggest that a God exists. And so in turn, science is what we should turn to, science and reason, because we have scientific models and experiments, and because, well, we have a phone, we have advanced technology, we have electricity, advanced education, we have advanced medicine, and that because of all these things, we now, we should look to science as a guide instead of religion and faith. But my problem with this is that this ignores one of the most fundamental ideas behind science, and that is that scientific theories are theories. They cannot be fully proven. That was one of the first things I learned in my senior year of high school in physics class, is that a scientific theory cannot be proven. There can be compelling evidence to suggest that our model is correct, but in reality, our model has been created by flawed humans. And so, again, science is based on our perception, and just because we have evidence to suggest that our perception is correct doesn't necessarily mean that it is fully what is right and true.
Well, this is only a problem if one holds to the idea that human beings can obtain absolute truth with a capital T, outside of abstracts such as mathematics, and a few naturalistic exceptions such as the existence of consciousness. I think, therefore I am, even if the form I am in isn't what I observe. I could be a brain in a vat, being made to dream, but no matter what, I have consciousness. Thing is, in general, I don't hold to truth with a capital T. I hold to truth as being that which can be demonstrated to be so. To paraphrase Ayn Rand, if you can't show it, you don't know it, and you shouldn't pretend that you do. The philosophy of science is well aware of human fallibility, which is why we take a variety of measures to reduce said factor. Peer review, replicability, open discourse, all of this is designed to periodically reassess what it is we think we know. Yes, our understanding changes over time, but it's a scientific method that ensures that with each change, our understanding of the universe improves. It's not a weakness, it's a strength.
Now, if you look at something like faith, and you look at a belief in a higher power or a belief in a God, and perhaps even take religion out of it, I think that you go down to the same fundamental idea behind science, in that we don't know. Some people simply choose to go towards religion and follow that and follow faith in God and develop this personal relationship in God because they do not know, because they think that God is the ultimate creator and that God is there to give them guidance. And the argument of this group of people was that, well, science has brought us to a better state. Science has brought us to a state of having better things. You know, we can do robotic limbs for people, that's developing. We can get rid of genetic conditions, advanced medicine. You know, but there's nothing to say that science hasn't brought us to a more negative state too. I mean, the amount of suffering in the world that is going on at this very moment is immense, right? I mean, shit, 2% of the population of the world hold like something like 90% of the wealth. That's greed at its finest. And perhaps a phone is good because we have access to information, but in reality we're looking at a screen, and if we're texting people, doesn't that really take away from genuine human experience? And are all the roads that we've created for the cars really good, when in reality cars emit, which eventually leads to pollution and the ultimate downfall of the air quality of the whole world? Right? And so you got to understand that there's a duality principle here too, and I think that's what they weren't understanding. What I was trying to stress is that there are two ways of looking at every issue. And at the end of the day, science is models created by monkeys, right? And perhaps in 100 years we'll look at the models that we have today and realize that they were completely bunk, and that in reality we needed to explore the mind and explore meditation more and consider psychedelic substances more, because they would bring us to a more peaceful and zen state of mind and ultimately lead to less suffering in the world, because peace is the order of the day.
Oh yeah, I probably should have mentioned that at the start. If you didn't gather from their username, PsychonautWispy is a big advocate of psychedelic-inducing drugs. That's not a dig on their character in any way. I actually find their work so far to be much cleaner than most religious apologists I deal with, which I honestly think says a lot about the thoughts I come across in my day-to-day work. Thing is, I can see the issue here. It's one of equivocation. A better state on behalf of the humanist seems to be referring to the state of a better understanding of the universe, which allows us to better account for and even control previously uncontrollable variables such as disease, electricity, and even fire, though that last one is one of humanity's earliest scientific endeavours. Stoichiometry has just broadened the horizon even further in recent years, allowing us to better understand the molecular process of combustion. Now, PsychonautWispy takes this and changes that idea of better into one that interjects moralism into science. That's problematic right off the bat, since science as a collection of knowledge is completely amoral. Take anesthetic. On one hand, the exact same scientific knowledge that allows us to remove pain can be used to take another person's life without their consent. But that fact does not then impact our understanding of anesthetic. As for the idea that since we could be wrong, all hypotheses are equal and thus the scientific consensus can be rejected, note this. We didn't reduce the number of deaths from, say, bacteria by accepting that germ theory could be disproven at a later date. Therefore, we shouldn't challenge the idea that disease was caused by miasma, which was a belief at that time. We instead went with what we knew in a pragmatic fashion, though there was resistance. The resulting paradigm shift has since saved millions of lives annually, adding further credence to germ theory. The duality you mention is really irrelevant to what seems to have been the original point in how science betters our understanding of the world. Our understanding is not bound by moral concepts of good or bad. Ethics is a philosophical concept we apply to the method and application of science, but not to its findings. Just because something is distasteful doesn't mean we can ignore it. But just a minor thing on one of the ills you raised. What is a genuine human experience? I hear this thrown around a lot with the presence of the digital world, but I can't help but find it somewhat amusing. At current, everything we know about the human mind suggests it's nothing more than an electrochemical computer. So I find the idea that human connectivity through a secondary computer is inherently worse or less genuine to lack all sense. I guess I'm just a child of the digital age who phases between online and offline so readily that I'm comfortable with human interaction on either. I spent a year apart from Udita, my partner, as I finished my degree and she returned to India. But the connection we maintained online for that time wasn't false. Sure, I would have loved to have held her at the time, but we were still there for one another.
I think we as people, all of us want to achieve peace, that kind of peace that stays and calms our heart. And to base your entire belief system on science is to base your entire belief system on something that you simply don't know if it's true. And perhaps the same could be said about faith, but there's no reason that one should be considered any better than the other. Because, I mean, if you look at science and you think, okay, well, how can we understand the world? How can we understand ourselves as humans? Well, let's look at the smallest thing possible, right? Let's look at the mechanism of the smallest unit of measurement and see how that leads up to us. See how those things working together leads up to us being as humans. And so we get to atoms, and then we get down to quantum physics and quarks, and, well, one of the fundamental principles of quantum physics is the uncertainty principle, and that we don't know what a particle will do, what a subatomic particle will do. And so again, you're still basing your faith and reason and belief system on something that doesn't necessarily have 100% true sound evidence, right? And so, yes, science can be very helpful, but science can also be very, very harmful. Similarly, religion can be very, very helpful, and it can be used wrong. It can be harmful. So I don't think there's any reason why one particular set of beliefs or viewpoints should be advertised as the correct viewpoint or advertised as the correct way of thinking or as the way that will lead to the most peace and joy in the world, because it's simply not true.
If you're demanding certainty of the universe, then you're going to be very disappointed. But just because we may not have all the evidence available at current does not then mean we can just discard of what we do have. Science is superior to faith as it's a method which forms its conclusions on what we do know, whilst faith is just an assertion made in spite of what we know. On that basis alone, science can be concluded to be superior to faith, and that's without considering the probability factor of certainty. The evidence can be so overwhelmingly in support of a specific understanding, and yes, it's possible that the entire universe is a simulation, that all evidence we have is wrong. But since I have no basis to suggest that that's even likely at all I can do is continue on the basis of what we can observe. As for religion, which is a faith-based ideology centered around some element of the supernatural, is harmful in its very nature. At its core, all religions around the world that have ever existed teach that the evidence can be ignored in favor of assertion, which in itself stifles understanding and progress. But worse than that, it allows individuals to come along and use that assertion as a means to control people without question. To quote Steven Weinberg, with or without it, you would have good people doing good things and evil people doing evil things. But for good people to do evil things, that takes religion. End quote. However, I'd replace religion with any faith-based system. Science does not offer that meanwhile, and neither does the secular philosophy of ethics. That is a negative that is intrinsic to faith and faith alone in this conversation. Simply saying that they're the same when I can come along and demonstrate clear differences between said perspectives is problematic at the very least, and I hope this helps you understand a little better.
You know, and so, and one of the things too is that with the thousands of years of religion that we have evidence of in history, and all these people saying that something else is going on, right? Thousands and thousands of people for over many years. Don't you think we should consider that a little bit? I mean, yeah, science, we can use that to help understand our world and create really cool gadgets, but in understanding ourselves and why we're here in the mind, shouldn't we consider what people have been trying to get us to listen to for hundreds of thousands of years? Even if what they were saying wasn't necessarily 100% correct, don't you think they were maybe onto something? And to dismiss supernaturalism as a whole, I think, is to just simply do the human experience an injustice, because in my opinion, that's part of the fun of being a human. And that we go through our day-to-day lives in our limited mortal beings and our limited physical flesh, right? Because, our bodies are pretty freaking amazing, but they're not perfect, right? They could be a lot better. I mean, paired with technology and cybernetics, perhaps they could be better, or they could be worse. Perhaps robots could take over the world, right? And so I just have an issue with the fundamental idea behind the disconnect between secular humanism and faith and religion.
But science has considered it, and it's always been open to reconsidering it upon further data becoming available. You've just talked at length about the fact that science is open to reassessing its perspectives as a negative, and here you are complaining that it's too closed off to reassessing the topic on the supernatural. Do you see the problem inherent there? As for the idea that because so many cultures have talked about some aspect of the supernatural that there must be something there, even if they're not precise in what they discuss, why? For a start, the term supernatural is a metagroup of many very different claims that are in no way related. Now, there were some items that reappear time and time again, such as the notion of a non-material consciousness, aka the soul. But this was simply the result of the same general ignorance people had of the physical functioning behind said consciousness. So yes, the similarity suggests a shared origin, but not in the way that it suggests a soul exists, but rather that we as a species were ignorant to the functionings of the brain. Hell, we didn't even realize that it was the brain that was responsible for intelligence for the longest time. People used to think it was the heart that was responsible for intelligence and consciousness.
Now, I ended up being accused of a neo-Nazi and Hitler supporter when I was asked if I thought that God condoned slavery, and that there is evidence of that in the Bible. Now, this particular sect of people said that, the Bible is the Word of God. If that is the ultimate authority. But in reality, our experience is based entirely on our perception. And so there was a disconnect for me, because I was told that, what is written in the Bible and what is written in that book by people who have interpreted the Word of God is in fact the Word of God. Which, it's again, we're going to perception. Whatever religious view you decide to subscribe to is perhaps whatever Word of God you want it to be.
I have no idea as to what is actually being stated here. The Nazis and their ideologies paled in comparison to the writings of the Bible, which the vast majority of Christians hold as divine revelation. If you're not a Christian, I don't see the relevance of this. However, if you are, but you're one of those Christians who holds with a watery, the Bible is just man's attempts to understand God, then I have to ask, why is your apparently all-knowing, all-powerful deity such a pathetic excuse for a deity that they would not only fail to convey their actual message, but would allow a message of such vileness to be written and then accredited to them? I think that about sums up my thoughts on this.
And so why is your perception of science any different from my perception of religion? Just because you have compelling evidence, I have compelling evidence for myself too, right?
Then please, supply that evidence in a peer-reviewed format, such as an article in an accredited journal. If you don't, then no. You don't have evidence as well, and your position is nothing akin to the one I hold to.
Reason does not always lead us to the most logical conclusion, right? Reasonably, if there is perhaps a country in Africa that needs water, we can bring a bunch of water there. But then we just introduce a bunch of items and we don't actually create jobs. And see, this goes to the fundamental idea of behind humans as a whole, in that we do what we think is right at the time. Perhaps at the time, coal seemed like a fantastic solution, but as we evolve and understand and learn more, perhaps we realize that it's something different.
No. Shallow reasoning doesn't always lead us to the most logical conclusion. This has been demonstrated very well here with your water example, as well as the other examples you've drawn on earlier in the video. You lay out a shallow premise and then follow it with further reasoning, stating, but, before going on to add further informed thought, aka reasoning, on the matter. You're relying on reasoning to suggest that reasoning is flawed because shallow reasoning is less in depth than deep reasoning.
And so, really, I'd like to subscribe to the idea that we don't know, and that faith is just simply a way of giving it to God and just giving the things that you don't understand and that you simply cannot conceive of to a higher power, to something else. And in my opinion, that is so much more therapeutic and brings so much more of a peaceful state of heart and mind to be able to just let go and say, hey, I don't understand.
No, it's completely dishonest. If you don't know, that's fine. Science acknowledges that there's a lot we don't know. That's not the problem here. The problem is that people, such as yourself, go, well, we don't know everything, so we can ignore what we do know and posit whatever we want to believe in. Which is not intellectually honest. You're pretending to have answers you don't by proxy in the form of asserting the existence of a God who does know. That's not liberating, that's just lazy. Science acknowledges that we still have a lot to find out, but it shows us what we do currently know, which allows us to draw up the most accurate picture possible with the available data so that we can advance our understanding to find out more.
And on that very same note, if we try to use science as a means to describe all things, then how in the hell do you describe a psychedelic experience? Because science doesn't know what's happening on a high dose of a psychedelic experience. I mean, we can tell the part of the brain that's being affected, but nobody knows why the substance brings about these experiences. It's impossible to bring back every single facet of a psychedelic experience to this life. And so if that's not an indication of something higher or something greater than ourselves, I don't know what is.
Well, you clearly don't know, as that psychedelic experience is of this world. It's your brain chemistry imbalance resulting in heightened stimulation and emotion. If you want to learn more, you could always study the journals, but there's nothing about the psychedelic experience that even suggests some supernatural involvement, no matter how many trashy lobster psychologists assert otherwise. Disagree? Well, the peer review process awaits. Submit your evidence of the supernatural and claim your Nobel Prize.
And so this goes to the idea of the fourth dimension as well, in that, well, what if we had a higher sense of awareness? What if there were 6 senses? And one of the questions, or one of the things they said in response to the fourth dimensional concept is that, well, how do you know the fourth dimension exists? And I said, well, how do you even know that you exist? How do you even know that you're not just a brain in a frickin' vat? Or that you're not even living in the third, that you're completely a one-dimensional being? Or that there are hundreds and hundreds of different ways of looking at it. And so to just use science as the rule book for following and for understanding is so flawed. Because there is far too much in this world that simply cannot be explained by science. And there's still so much that has yet to be even considered by science. I mean, species that have been undiscovered, perhaps realms of thought in the mind, perhaps ways of achieving lucid dreaming, perhaps more about the dream state, the sleeping state, the psychedelic experience, right? There is so much that science simply doesn't know what to say. And not to mention, I mean, the idea behind how the universe started and the Big Bang, right? When you go back to that and you look at the Big Bang Theory, okay, this is basically what science says. They say, okay, give us just this one miracle. Give us this one miracle of the Big Bang. We can describe how everything else works. And perhaps logically and reasonably that would work, but since when is the universe logical and reasonable? Huh? To me, it's a crazy world moving out there. Since when is the cellular world logical and reasonable, or the atomic or quantum world? It doesn't make any sense. Right? And so, to me, if nothing makes sense, well, there's got to be a little secret. There's got to be something that we're not being told. There's got to be a sense. There's got to be something after we die or before we were even born, that's something that's going on. And I don't know what that is, but I trust that God does, and I trust that God has a plan for all of us. But
right. Now prove any of what you've just said. Because all you're doing here is playing the childlike what-if game. Well, science doesn't run on what-ifs. Science fiction does. As for the Big Bang, way to go in proving that you don't understand the basics of science. The Big Bang was just a shift from singularity to current universal state via natural processes. How was that a miracle, something which defies natural processes? The Big Bang was not the formation of the universe, by the way, it's the initial event of the universe. But there's also no miracle to be found in the universe forming, just a difficult question we're currently working on and have several testable hypotheses of which the supernatural is not related to a single one. If you had evidence of the supernatural, then the scientific paradigm would shift and, with it, our understanding. But until that time, this is a pointless thought experiment designed to shield a baseless position from the most basic scrutiny, which brings it tumbling down.
That is all for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's small talk on secular humanism and a little bit about my conversation with a transgender atheist. We left things on a good note. I was able to shake his or her hand. Things ended on a good note without, we disagreed on some things, but at the end of the day, it was a very titillating conversation and, stimulated some creativity for a video. So, leave a like if you guys enjoyed this video and comment your thoughts down below. I would love to hear your guys' opinion on this particular set of ideas, and perhaps I could even make a whole another video on secularism itself or perhaps other philosophical viewpoints.
Please don't. At least not without doing some damn basic research. As for the trans person you talk to, I damn well hope that they were a non-binary individual who went by both him/her pronouns and you didn't just disrespect them as a person. But even if they aren't, maybe you didn't realize what you were saying was a dick thing to say. You use the pronouns they tell you, and if you're unsure about this, then stick to the gender neutral they singular, which has been part of the English language for centuries. Beyond that, whilst I had high hopes for this video to begin with, I was sadly disappointed with how it progressed. Do your research next time and try to keep to the point. Hi there. I'd just like to say a few things here at the end of the video before you go. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone who's ever donated to the channel via Patreon, giving a special thanks to the following people: Hannah Banghart, Matthew Kovac, John Schoenrock, Daniel Martinez, and Alexander Williams. Your support has ensured this channel its ability to grow over the years. I'd also like to ask that you comment down below and like this video, as well as subscribe, hit the bell icon, and follow Essence of Thought on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Please also consider following Atheist Alliance International on Facebook, a humanist organisation dedicated to helping atheists around the globe. Lastly, I'd like to request that you treat the people responded to in this video with a reasonable degree of respect. Whilst we understand that there are justifiable limits to said respect when tackling certain heavy topics and anger can be a very genuine emotion in fighting injustice, any comments utilising language which insults others on the basis of perceived gender, sexuality, ethnicity or ability both mental and physical will be removed immediately and the commenter may be blocked on the moderator's discretion. Let's work to keep this space one which upholds the values of humanism. Thank you.